Thanks to TCL for sponsoring this video. If someone sat me down 5 years ago and said, John, you will sell a website, your beard will get much grayer, and you'll be able to buy a smartphone with a 6.67-inch AMOLED display, a 48 megapixel quad camera setup, and a beastly 4,500 milliamp hour battery, and something new called 5G for under 500 bucks, I would have called them crazy. But that is actually what you get with the TCL 20 Pro 5G. You get a lot of awesome. It's not a perfect package, but it's one that's really good and it's certainly compelling for the price. And before I get into the video, we're actually gonna give one of these phones away, one of the two that I have here. So stay tuned to the end and I'll tell you guys how to enter to win. So TCL made a huge splash last year, putting their own brand name on phones. They've been making phones for a really long time. With last year's 10 Pro, I think they showed how a company can sort of merge, bring sort of quality and mid-range to the market. And those two things don't have to be separate. I think luckily for consumers, buying a great phone now is really not hard to do. I mean, you have to look extra hard, I think, to find a bad phone. Everything is some version of good. And there are a few things that the TCL is doing, I think that's setting it apart from the competition, things that they are kind of uniquely qualified to do and bring. And I think obviously that starts with the display, right? I'm guessing that like 70% of you watching this video have a TCL TV somewhere in your house or know somebody who does. I own 3 of them. I bought one for my parents. It's usually sort of the go-to TV. I like Roku, I like good displays, I don't like spending a ton of money. TCL televisions and displays have checked all of those boxes. So you take a company that makes your own display technology and now starts making phones, you can start to see how the vertical integration could help the consumers. I said it for years, and I'll die on this hill, that the display is the most important part of a phone. I don't care what the specs are, if the display is bad, that's how you do and interact with everything that phone can do. So 20 Pro, it's rocking a pretty nice 6.67-inch AMOLED panel that is obviously, surprise, made by TCL. It's tuned and calibrated the way that they wanted that display to be, and I think the expertise shows here with that. And I can go on and tell you like how the screen is bright and colors pop and blacks are black and all that is certainly true, but I think the most important thing that I take away from the screen is that I didn't notice a real difference between this and $1,000 to $1,200 display. And that is a giant compliment to TCL. This display holds its own on the market, even in the flagship space. Now there are some caveats there. It's not perfect. There's some cuts that I think had to be made to get it to that like $500 price point. So first, it's FHD+, so you aren't getting the highest resolution out there. Also, no high refresh rate, it's stuck at 60 Hertz. Because of that price though, I think that those cuts do make sense. And if you take a flagship phone that's at FHD at similar resolution, I think you'd be hard pressed to see a giant difference between what TCL is doing and said flagship. And as much as I love high refresh rate screens, and I say it in almost every video, in a phone that costs $500, I understand why it's not there. Now would I want it there? Absolutely, but at least I get it. TCL is also using what they're calling Next Vision 2.0, and I don't know why they didn't put an E in Next, but it's NXT, and basically this is their calibration for the display. Like everything nowadays, it's gonna use AI to enhance what you are looking at. So it can change the color and contrast depending on kind of what you're showing. Supports HDR10 and also can convert SDR to HDR. I think one of the most interesting things of this phone that I hadn't seen before is its True Flush technology. Kind of a weird name, but hear me out. Basically, it makes sure the skin tones that people on screen look accurate. And this leads to an overall really great display experience, which I think I would expect from TCL. And when you hear sort of flesh display technology, the first thing that came to my mind was like skin smoothing from Samsung and how it looks very, very unnatural. This just makes your skin tone on the camera look actually how your skin tone looks in real life. It doesn't do any weird, like strange filtery looking stuff. It just makes the image, I think, look more true to life. So I give TCL credit for that. All right, so aside from the display, I think the other things that are important to me is the look and feel of the phone and the cameras. So I like the design changes they made this year. It's made of glass on the front and the back with a nice curve to it. I don't love using waterfall displays. They look good, but my finger tends to hit the side quite a bit. It's a personal choice here. If I could choose, I would choose not waterfall, but it does look good. So bear that in mind if you're looking to pick one up. Perhaps my favorite thing, the glass on the back has a matte finish, so less fingerprints. And this is gonna sound crazy, but the camera system, which is vertical, there's no camera bump. I'm just gonna slow clap for no camera bump. I didn't realize how much I missed phones that were flat on the back. The back of this phone, if you just look at it, and I was like, how much did this phone cost? I think most people would be like, $900, $1,000. This phone feels premium, which is, again, a huge credit to TCL. So I think if there's one sore spot with a lot of mid-range phones, it's going to be the camera system. That is where a lot of the cuts are made to get to the price. So I'm not going to say that this is the best camera system ever and that it's going to outshoot flagships from Apple and Samsung and Google. It's not at that level. But again, you have to bring it back to the price. And for $500, you are getting 4 cameras on the back. Even 2 years ago, that was a hard thing to imagine. And I think TCL is making a big effort to make sure that camera system is at least as good as it can be. All right, so main sensor, I'm gonna get a little technical. It's a 48 megapixel Sony IMX582 with OIS, optical image stabilization. I like saying OIS instead of OIS. It's fun, try it, OIS. In fact, it's the same sensor that actually is in the OnePlus 8. That was a camera I really liked. And so here it's honestly a relatively similar experience. So here are some examples. So you can kind of see that the blues are shifting to magenta in the photos. Auto white balance in video was sometimes good, sometimes not so good. It was inconsistent. It didn't handle highlights that well in video or photo in comparison to flagships. And you can see those comparisons here, what they look like. And again, look at these comparisons here and keep the price in mind. One is $500, one goes up to almost $1,200 plus. You are still getting a really good camera system. I was actually impressed with video stabilization mode. It did a pretty nice job. EIS is on by default, but you can also turn on a super anti-shake mode, which changes the settings to 1080p 30 FPS, but it did a really nice job. So aside from the main camera, it's got a 16 megapixel wide angle, a 5 megapixel macro camera, which I don't use that much, but if macro is your jam, it's there. It also has a depth camera. So you have a ton of range with this phone. And I think one of the best things that I can say about the phone, and for really the first time in a while a phone's at this price, is you don't have to worry about the camera. Any photo you take is going to be some version of good. And that is an awesome place to be. And really kind of now through the middle end of 2021, it's one of the first times that you can actually say that. All right, so those features aside, differentiates the phone, I think is the little things that make it unique. The 20 Pro packs a lot of those. I call them intangibles. All right, so it's rocking the Snapdragon 750G, a tried and true processor with 6 gigs of RAM. This is a place where TCL was able to save some money. We've seen competitors sort of up the RAM to 8, but honestly, I'm fine with it because the processor ran extremely well. Now, the headroom for future years might be a problem with the 6 gigabytes of RAM, but at least right now, it ran crazy smooth. Games were fast, multitasking with no problems at all. And for most tasks that I was doing on it, like social media, browsing the web, you'd be hard-pressed to notice any difference between this and the flagship chips, the Snapdragon 888, for example. And even more, I'm glad that TCL is using the Qualcomm chip in these phones. There are a ton of manufacturers looking to create even cheaper alternatives, and I think there you see a sacrifice in speed and quality. 750G, it's, I think, a pretty good middle ground for this phone. And it's a chip we see a lot of competitors in this mid-range price go to because it offers a really nice combination of performance and value. But that performance aside, it also packs features that I care about. Beast mode battery that you can charge with wireless charging or quick charge. So wireless charging is actually new for this year. In-display fingerprint reader as well, which, surprise, actually works and works really well, which is awesome to see make its way to a $500 phone. Also, if you care, I know a lot of you do, there's a 3.5 millimeter headset jack and a micro SD card slot, making this one of the last phones to have those. And if you care about those features, you're getting both of them from TCL. There's also a programmable smart key, which is insanely programmable. You can program to do anything from a single press to a double press, a ton of activities. TCL is kind of letting you do with it what you want, which is nice to have. Of course, you're also getting 5G, it's in the name. Android 11. So also you're gonna get 2 years of OS upgrades in addition to 2 years of security updates. So I think the big question is, who is this phone for? And that's a really personal choice. This phone is for you. First of all, if you want a 3.5mm headset jack and a micro SD card and don't wanna spend crazy amount of money. But if you wanna compromise a really good display, good enough camera that you don't have to worry about it, and a really solid build quality, this might be the phone to look at. All right, so TCL sent us 2 phones. We don't need 2 phones here, so I wanna give someone a chance to win one. Super easy, just give the video a thumbs up and leave a comment why you would want the phone. But in that comment, leave a social handle so we can contact you. If you win, we'll put an example on screen. Again, all the information will be in the description.